Today we are addressing the most frequently asked question I get, which is, how much yarn do I need for my project? So let's talk about it. The easiest way to do this is to break down your garment into squares, or, rectangles. But break it down. You don't have to look at it in terms of like, oh, there are decreases, or, socks have funny shapes. Don't worry about it. Think about it in terms of squares, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. All you really need are some measurements and some very simple math, and you can calculate how much yarn you need for any pattern. So if you have a garment in the size that you want, so say I'm going to crochet this for my kid, I know this sweater fits her well, I'm going to use this sweater to get those measurements. If you don't happen to have one, that's not a problem. You can always go online and look for a sizing chart. There are tons of sizing charts out there for free. You can check on Pinterest. You can also find one in my shop. So I've got sizes from newborn all the way to adults on the same sizing chart, and you can find it there. I'll link it below. But all you need are the sizes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure the width of the project, because we're going to think of this vest area as one square. The sleeves we're going to do separate. So we're going to do just this area as one giant square or rectangle, whatever. So you're going to measure the width. So for this, at the widest part, so I should probably say that. So this is about, 15 and a half-ish inches. So I'm just going to round that up to 16. I'd rather have more yarn than less, so a little bit bigger isn't going to hurt. So 16 inches by, what is this? Stay there. 13 inches. All right, so this square is 16 by 13. My sleeve, because this is part of this square, I'm going to start right around here. So we're going to measure the length, which is 10 inches, by the widest part of the sleeve, which is 6 inches. So 10 by 6, or I guess 10 by 6. There we go. I'm not going to worry about the decreases in the sleeve. I'm just going to do a big square. Remember, this is going to give you some extra yarn, and most of us want to add a little detail like this to our project. So, you'll have the extra yarn you need in order to do that. So, going on. The next step is to calculate the total area of your garment. So if we take the vest measurements, we're going to multiply the width times the length for a total of 208 inches. Because you have a front panel and a back panel, you need to multiply that by 2. You also need the area of the sleeves, so that's going to be that length times the width, which gives us 60 inches, only this time you have to multiply it by 4, because since we had the sleeve laying flat, you're going to multiply the top part of the sleeve by the back part, that gives us 2. You have 2 sleeves, so now we have to multiply that by 4. You will then add the area of the vest to the area of the sleeves to get a total garment area of 656 inches squared. All right, the next thing you're going to need is to create a swatch. So this is 4 inches square, or, if you're using centimeters, make a 10 centimeter square using the yarn, the hook size, and the stitch you want to use for your project. It doesn't matter whether you're knitting, crocheting, Tunisian crochet, whatever stitch you intend to use for your project, make a swatch using that stitch. Make sure that the final measurement is 4 inches for your square, or 10 centimeters if you're using centimeters. So, because Tunisian crochet tends to shrink a little, so if you make an initial chain of, 4 inches, you might have a sample of just like 3 inches instead. So, make sure that your final product is an actual 4-inch square or a 10 centimeter square. All right, you're going to need to, if you have a scale, so this is just my kitchen scale. So sorry, I try to get all the scratches and stuff off of this. This poor thing has gone through so much. If you don't have a digital scale, don't worry. I'll show you how to do it with a different measurement. But weigh your sample. That's it. So this weighs 8 grams right there. So it's got a little extra weight because it's got the stitch marker and a tiny bit of extra yarn. But that's not a big deal. We'd rather have more yarn than less. So our swatch is 8 grams. Now, for those of you that don't have a scale, you can also use a measurement. So if you don't want to cut your yarn, which I'm kind of lazy to do, so I don't like to do that, you're just going to tape it here or mark it somehow. Doesn't matter. Then you're going to pull apart your swatch. So pull it out, pull all of your stitches out, and then you're going to measure the yarn you used. So take a tape measure and measure the length of the yarn you used. So, where is this? starting here from our tape. And then just go. Pull on your yarn, unravel your sample, and measure out how much yarn you used. You're then going to take the area of the swatch. Once you have that area, you're going to divide the total garment area, which was our 656 inches, divided by the area of our swatch. This tells us that we need about 41 swatches or 41 squares in order to complete our garment. If you're using the weight of your swatch, then you're going to multiply the number of swatches, which was our 41, by the weight of your swatch, which was our 8 grams. That gives us a total of 328 grams. If you're using the length, you're going to take your total length of your swatch, which for me was 1,072 inches, multiply that by the number of swatches, so 41. That gave me a total of 43,952 inches. Now, there are 36 inches in 1 yard, so you're going to divide that 43,000 by 36, and it gives us a total of 1,228 yards. I'm going to round up that 0.88 to the next whole number, because again, we'd rather have more yarn than less. The next step is to look at your yarn label. It's going to tell you the total yardage or the total weight per either hank, skein, cake, whatever it is you're using. And the last bit of math you will need to do is you're going to take that total weight or the total length of what you calculated for your garment and divide that by either the weight or the length of the hanks or, whatever yarn it is you want to use. So if we take that weight, it's going to be 328 grams divided by 50 grams, gives us a total of 6.56 hanks. Now, since we don't typically buy half a hank of yarn or half a cake of yarn, just round up to the nearest whole number. So for this sweater, I'm going to need approximately 7 hanks of yarn. All right, now let's say you want to do this for something like a sock. The process is the same. You're just going to use, a sock. So I would just go through and kind of square it out. I know this is terribly drawn, but there you go. Through, make it at the widest part. Okay. And yes, I know that this is a short sock, but a similar process could be used for a longer sock, and that still gives you extra yarn. So it's, at least for me, better to have more yarn than less. Anyway, so you go through and do the same. So you get the area, which, this is about 8 and a little bit over, so I'm going to round up to 9. And then 4.5, so I'm going to round to 5. So 9 by 5. And because we have, where's my eraser? Okay. And because the sock, like the sleeves and the sweater, it's not just this one flat thing. You've got more fabric than that. You're going to multiply that area by 2. So I'm going to be, my tripod is right here, so I'm going to try to squeeze this and write as legibly as possible. So if we have 9 by 5, gives us 45 inches squared. All right, once you have the area you're going to need, or I guess the total area you're going to need for your project, you go through and you do the math exactly the same as we did for the sweater. So there you go. So, you can use this process no matter what it is you're making, whether it's, a sweater, sock, mittens, a scarf, it doesn't matter. The process is the same. Just think about it in terms of squares or rectangles, get the area, and then go from there. Remember that this is an approximation. It's not going to be perfect, and there are a lot of variables that go into it. But for patterns such as mine that don't have the yardage for any of the, it's really rare. I think I only have a handful of patterns that have exact yardage. But for patterns like that, all you need to do is have a few basic measurements, and you can calculate how much yarn you're going to need. So, and for those of you that had asked, the reason I don't do exact yardage on any of my patterns is because they are all measurement based, or most of them at least are measurement based. And I try to make them so that you can use any yarn or hook combination you want. So for instance, this one I crocheted using two strands of fingering yarn. But if you wanted to use, a worsted yarn instead and just use one strand, or you wanted to make this as a bulky sweater with a different size hook, you can. And, the yardage would change. And if you're making this for I made this for my daughter when she was, I think 5. And I've also made this for myself. And I'm, how old am I? 34? 30? Am I 34? Am I 35? I don't even know. I'm either 34 or 35. My birthday's November and then 87. You know, you can do the math if you really want to know. But, you know, there's a bit of a size difference. So yardage is going to be different. And I think I used a worsted yarn actually for mine, whereas this is different. So that's the method I used to calculate how much yarn I was going to need. But anyway, I hope you guys found that helpful. If you still have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or leave me a comment. If you leave me a comment, everybody else can see. So, you know, that helps other people too. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you all again next week for some more patterns and stitches and all kinds of fun stuff.